Let's talk about alcohol, and let's just acknowledge that human beings have been consuming alcohol for thousands of years. I think most people don't realize that being drunk is actually a poison-induced disruption in the way that your neural circuits work, right? I mean, we're talking about a substance that people have been highly motivated to pursue, that are still highly motivated to pursue, to create and to consume, that they'll spend money on, and that's despite the fact that it makes them feel good and then it makes them feel lousy. But most humans have been consuming alcohol in order to change their internal state, in order to feel differently than they would otherwise. People who tend to feel more alert and excited every time they drink, they tend to get a real lift. They become kind of the life of the party, and that lasts a long while. Those people are the ones that really have to be careful about predisposition for alcoholism. That feeling of being drunk or inebriated or tipsy or lightheaded is something that many, not all, but many humans seem to enjoy and pursue, even though typically it leads to a feeling of being less happy, less motivated, more stressed, etc. when the alcohol wears off. But I really want to highlight the fact that when people ingest this poison, because indeed it is poison, the range of effects is very different. Let's say you're just somebody who has a drink or two on Friday, maybe a few more on Saturday, or maybe you're somebody who consumes all your alcohol one night per week or one night per month. Occasional drinkers will have a briefer, meaning less long-lasting, period of feeling good when they drink, and then more quickly transition into a state in which they're tired or they start losing motor skills, they start slurring their speech. Chronic alcohol intake can disrupt the brain, even if the chronic intake is very low. For many years, it's been known that high levels of alcohol consumption, so 12 to 24 drinks per week or more, is certainly causing neurodegeneration, in particular of the so-called neocortex, the outer layers of the brain that house associative memories, that house our ability to think and plan. So to make very clear, drinking a lot, so having 3 or 4 drinks per night, every night of the week is clearly bad for the brain. Now, in this study, they looked at people who, on average, were drinking 1 or 2 drinks per night. So that could be 14 drinks on the weekend. It could be 1 drink per night. It could be 7 drinks on Friday. So this is an important study because it says that if you're consuming even just 7 glasses of wine across the week, it's likely that there's going to be some degeneration of your brain in response to that alcohol intake.
If we had to make a bad drug legal, the worst choice was alcohol. It's definitely the case. Canada is doing this countrywide experiment. We just legalized marijuana in Canada. Like it's not completely legal yet, but the bill was passed. Mm-hmm. I know there is some data showing that in counties in the U.S. where marijuana has been legalized, the overuse of opiates for pain has decreased substantially. That's awesome. And the crime rates have gone down. Alcohol also makes people aggressive. It's the only drug we know that actually makes people aggressive. So you see a massive effect on crime rates because alcohol is kind of an escape into, it's not full unconsciousness, although it certainly can be. Half the people who murder someone are drunk. Oh yeah. And half the people who are murdered are drunk. And you're most likely to be murdered by a family member. Yeah. So I've been joking with my audiences is like, well, if you really want to get killed, the best thing to do is go drink with a family member. So which is actually statistically true. Alcohol really is a good drug for coping with anxiety. That's why people use it. And so if you are a bit more socially anxious, and you also have that positive response to alcohol, it's a great drug for the moment. Right. Right. There's consequences. So why quit drinking? So I don't end up in hell. Hey, there's a reason to stop. And then if you make that hell real, it's like, here's all the details of my personal hell. Yes, let's avoid that. Right. So then you have something to run the hell away from. So let's say, what would have life been like you for you if you were addicted? So you don't have a career anymore. No. Right. So you've given all that up. And where am I going to be in 5 years? I know where, because I've watched this with people. You're going to be just like you are now, except a lot more of what's good about you is going to be gone, and a lot more of what's terrible is going to be amplified. And you're going to be like, in 5 years, you're going to be 10 years older instead of 3 years older. You're also going to find out who your friends are. Yeah. Because if you're starting to put your life together, and you have friends that object, those are not friends. Those are just people you know. And you might think, well, I can't give them up. It's like, oh, yes, you can. And not only can you should, and it would be better for them. A friend is someone you can tell bad news to. And they won't tell you why you're an idiot. And They won't interfere with your suffering. They'll just listen, and maybe they'll suffer along with you. Okay, so you can tell bad news to them, and they won't tell you some worse thing that happened to them. But a friend is also someone you can tell good news to. And the friend will say, wow, in this veil of tears, something good happened to you. Great, man.
Congrats.
I'm wonderful. It's rare. It's unlikely. Good for you. I hope 10 more things like that happen. And they're not envious, and they're not jealous, and they're not one-upping you. If you're trying to get your life together and your friends get in the way, that's actually real useful for you, because you've now identified who your friends aren't. Because if they're aiming down and they want you going down with them, there's nothing good about what's happening to them, and there's certainly nothing good about that for you. One of the things that's really freeing to understand is that you're screwed no matter what you do. Give it up. It's risk everywhere. There's no secure path forward. You think, oh my God, that's terrible. It's like, yes, except for two things. You can pick your risk. That's the first thing. So you get to pick your poison. That's something. And second, you're a lot tougher than you think. So even though there's risk everywhere, if you confront it forthrightly, what you'll find is that you can actually handle the risk. And that's the security. Alcohol has exactly that effect. It is a great anti-anxiety drug, but so then it actually stops you from dealing with the anxiety. You don't have to learn how to overcome it. That's not good. You don't have to learn the skills. Well, you said you like to stand there with a beer in your hand. Well, give you something to do. You didn't know what else to do. And then you didn't have to learn. Right. I had the same issue. Like, I started drinking when I was 13, probably. On the farther north you go, the more the drinking becomes necessary, especially in the winter, you know. So, and there's not that much to do in those isolated small towns. Yeah. And when I used to go back to the little town I was from when I was an adult, even if I hadn't really had anything to drink for years, it was like, well, what are we going to do? Well, let's go to the bar. Why? Well, because there actually isn't anything else to do. So, you know, and so you end up there. If you really like alcohol, it does two things to you. It makes you more extroverted and enthusiastic while you're on the ascending limb of the blood alcohol curve, which is why you have to keep drinking once you start. Because if you plateau, that goes away. So you got to keep drinking. Okay, so that's one thing. It makes you more enthusiastic and more full of positive emotion. And the second thing it does is reduce anxiety. Alcohol is an interesting drug because it actually doesn't make people stupid. People who are drunk will take far more risk. And you might say, well, that's because they're too stupid to understand the risk. It's like, no, they're not. If you ask them about the risk when they're drunk, they can outline it perfectly. What it stops them from doing is caring about the risk. It's actually, and that's part of the anti-anxiety component. It's like, yeah, the risk is, that's why you can drive around drunk at high speed in a car, which is a really stupid thing to do. Yeah. People died all the time doing it, especially in the winter. It's like, wow, this is great. It's great until your head's gone through the windshield. You know, like so many things. Yeah. You know, it's like jumping off a cliff. It's, I'm flying, which is true until the last 1/10 of a second. It's like, then you're not flying, man.